Joseph of Arimathea, the man who buried Jesus, the untold story after the crucifixion. In the final hours of Jesus' life, when the sky had darkened and hope seemed buried alongside him, one man stepped out of the shadows of history and into eternal significance. His name was Joseph of Arimathea. Most people have never heard his story. Yet without him, the story of Jesus' burial and resurrection would look very different. This is the story of the man who buried Jesus. Jerusalem was restless. The crucifixion was over, but the tension remained. Roman soldiers still stood watch. Religious leaders guarded their reputations. And Jesus' followers, they were scattered, afraid, and silent. To associate with Jesus now was dangerous. To claim his body was unthinkable. Crucified criminals were usually dumped into mass graves, their bodies left to rot as a warning. No honor, no burial, no dignity. But one man could not let that happen. Joseph of Arimathea was not a poor fisherman or a wandering disciple. He was wealthy, respected, powerful, a member of the Jewish ruling council, the very group that had condemned Jesus to death. Yet the Gospels tell us something remarkable. Joseph was a secret disciple of Jesus. He had listened quietly, watched carefully, believed deeply though, until now, silently. But silence was no longer an option. As the sun began to set, Joseph made a decision that would cost him everything. He went to Pontius Pilate. Imagine the courage that took. A respected leader publicly aligning himself with an executed man accused of treason. One request, one sentence that could ruin his status forever. May I have the body of Jesus? Pilate was surprised that Jesus had already died. After confirming it with the centurion, he granted permission. And in that moment, Joseph crossed a line he could never uncross. Joseph didn't come alone. Another quiet follower emerged from the darkness, Nicodemus, the same man who once came to Jesus at night, afraid to be seen. Together, they brought a mixture of myrrh and aloes, about 75 pounds. An extravagant amount, a king's burial. They took Jesus' broken body down from the cross. Hands that once healed the sick now hung lifeless. The voice that calmed storms was silent. The heart that loved sinners had stopped beating. Joseph wrapped Jesus in clean linen, just as Scripture foretold. Every movement was careful, reverent, final. And then Joseph did something extraordinary. He gave Jesus his own tomb, a new tomb, cut into rock, untouched by death. This tomb wasn't meant for Jesus. It was meant for Joseph himself. With one act, Joseph surrendered his future, his reputation, and his legacy, placing it all in the hands of a man the world had rejected. A large stone was rolled in front of the entrance. The tomb was sealed, and for a moment, it seemed like death had won. But here's the detail that changes everything. Because Jesus was buried in a known, owned tomb, the resurrection could be verified. No anonymous grave, no missing body excuse, no confusion. If Joseph of Arimathea had not stepped forward, critics could have claimed Jesus was never truly buried, that the resurrection was a myth, a misunderstanding. But Joseph's courage anchored the truth in history. When the women returned on the third day, they knew exactly where to go. And when they arrived, the stone was rolled away. The tomb was empty. Death was defeated. Joseph disappears from the biblical record after this moment. No sermons, no miracles, no spotlight, just obedience, just courage when it mattered most. And that may be the most powerful part of his story. Joseph teaches us that sometimes faith doesn't roar, it steps forward quietly when everyone else steps back. He teaches us that belief costs something. That following truth may mean risking comfort. That one brave act can shape eternity. The man who buried Jesus didn't know he was preparing the stage for the greatest moment in human history, but God did. And because of Joseph of Arimathea, the tomb wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning. If this story moved you, consider subscribing for more untold stories from the Bible, stories that still change lives today.